Welcome back to another episode of the Decision Hour. I'm your host, Adam Bird. Folks, I'm excited about the interview I got lined up for you today. Life comes down to choices that we make. Today's guest is an incredible exception, is an incredible example of just that. She's a former Coast Guard officer, a Peace Corps volunteer, and a fly fishing instructor, which you guys know I love her already, right? After going through her own profound journey of healing following her military service, she wrote a powerful new memoir called The Starfish Chronicles. And you can get that on Amazon. Go to Amazon right now and find it. She's out there right now helping other women and veterans find their power on the water. So what I want you guys to do is grab a pen. You're going to take some notes on this one. We're going to dive into it today. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Sue Kerver. Sue, how are you today? Welcome to the Decision Hour.
Thanks, Adam. I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. We're going to dive right into this, Sue. I want you to tell the viewers and the listeners kind of you got such an incredible background serving kind of both in the Peace Corps as a volunteer and in the Coast Guard. Tell us more about your background. Who's Sue?
So who is Sue? Well, I started after college as a Peace Corps volunteer. I went over to Ethiopia, Africa. The plan was to be there for a couple of years, but unfortunately, we got evacuated a little bit early because the country went to war with a neighboring country. So there wasn't a whole lot of closure there. But in the time that I was in Africa, I had the incredible opportunity to teach school. It was very powerful. I got to teach pronouns and adjectives, but also sustainable development and different things that really impacted the community. I lived in the southern part of Ethiopia, so very agriculture, farm, resource-rich area. And I think that that's where I got this foundation of service to humanity.
Yeah.
And how I realized that it was really an important part of my own fabric and my own being.
So you go from that, which just seems like an awesome experience in and of itself, maybe with the exception of the evacuation part of it, but like just being there and I can only imagine just taking that all in. How do you go from that to the Coast Guard?
Well, there was a lot of steps in between, right? So I would say that I always had an adventurous soul.
Okay.
Even upon evacuation, they gave us the opportunity to take a plane ticket home or take money in lieu of the plane ticket. And Adam, I took that money.
Yeah.
And I mean, we trekked through Nepal and we went through India, and then I solo backpacked through the Highlands of Scotland and eventually found my way back to the U.S. And when I did, I was a little shocked because there was this reintegration into a culture that, the U.S. moves fast and lots of decisions, and that's just not the tempo that I had been in for the last couple of years when I was in Ethiopia. So I took a job teaching, and I was teaching middle school and high school. Okay. And fast forward a little bit, I was down in South Padre Island, Texas, and I'd met my first husband down there, who was a captain on a catamaran. And so because I was a teacher, I had the summers off. So I got to crew for him during the summer, and I just started to get this understanding of the ocean and of the sea. And I was like, wow, this is really incredible. I want to be a captain. And it's interesting how we hear things, right? Because he did not say, you can't be a captain. What he said was like, you're not ready to be a captain. But what I heard him say was, you're not good enough to be a captain. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see about that. So I had a senior in high school, who had mentioned that he was going to be joining the Coast Guard. And that was never on my bingo card.
Yeah.
Like, not even close, right? But my ex-husband and I moved from South Texas to Washington State, and I could not find a job. I was overqualified. People wouldn't hire me, whatever the case might be. So finally I said, you know what? I'm going to look into this Coast Guard thing. And I did. And I was the person who went to the recruiter's office 3 different times with like a legal pad full of questions that I needed to have answered before I would sign the paperwork.
No kidding.
No kidding. Yeah. So that was it. I joined as an enlisted member and went to boot camp at 27 years old.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So how many years did you do in the Coast Guard then?
So I did just over 10 years.
Yeah.
Coast Guard had this opportunity to leave for a couple of years if you wanted to go pursue something different, and then sort of freeze your time and you could come back in
Yeah.
to service. Kind of got busy, kind of forgot to come back in. So that, reentry came and went. But I did get off of active duty and then immediately recalled back to active duty for another like 3 or 4 month period.
Where were now you, at this time you said you were in Washington. Did you spend all of your time from the Coast Guard, that 10 years in Washington, or did that allow you to, and this is an ignorant question, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I was an Army guy, so let's just throw that out there right now.
Fair.
Like, I know the Coast Guard, like, you guys are obviously on water, and I see you guys on the rivers and stuff like that.
Mm.
I've heard you guys going overseas and stuff like that. What did you get to do, or did you get to go anywhere, or were you kind of stuck in the Pacific Northwest?
No, so I came in enlisted.
Okay.
And my first duty station was Port Angeles, Washington. And, I mean, I had been teaching school and done the Peace Corps and all of these things. And
Yeah.
here I am picking weeds and scrubbing toilets and doing the gate guard duty and all of these things, thinking, oh my God, what did I just do with my life? But I also put in a package for officer candidate school. So I got accepted and I went to OCS in the same year that I had just gone through boot camp. So
Oh,
it was
nice.
like a
Okay.
lot of
Yeah.
a lot of training in that same year. Coming out of OCS, I got stationed in Guam. So we went over
Wow.
to Guam for a couple of years and just traveled all over the place. I mean, Australia, like all over the place when we were in Guam. And then we came back. I got stationed on a cutter, 210-foot Coast Guard cutter out of Astoria, Oregon. So that's where I did a lot of law enforcement patrols, and we did Washington, Oregon, California fisheries patrol, but we also went south. And so we did a lot of like drug interdiction, migrant
sure.
interdiction.
Yeah.
They called it JIADF
Yeah.
patrols. And then from there, I applied for grad school and I got selected to go to grad school while I was still in service. And so they sent me to University of Georgia. Go Dogs. Got my master's there. And, coming out of grad school, when the service pays for it, you don't have a whole lot of choice as far as where they send you. So
Right.
they sent me to New Orleans, and then Deepwater happened. And yeah, the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 10 years with the Coast Guard. Thank you for your service. I think that is absolutely amazing. From that point there, being a veteran, transitioning out of the military can be difficult for people. Was it difficult for you? And when you finally took off the uniform, what was the hardest part of finding your next mission?
So, when I got out of the Coast Guard, I think because I had just gone through that major crisis response with Deepwater, I was ready for a change. At least I felt ready
Yeah.
for a change. And so it was very thoughtful. My decision was, I was like, well, I'll just get out for a couple of years and see what it's like to not be in service any longer. And I would not say that I was immediately impacted. At least I didn't realize I was immediately impacted by not feeling like I had mission. I just got out and we moved from New Orleans to Houston and, got a job and did my thing. It wouldn't be until I would say a few years later when it started to dawn on me that doing this thing and then doing this thing and doing this thing wasn't meeting my soul's needs. And so I really wasn't connected to purpose and mission. I was just going through the motions of doing life and doing my thing. And that ultimately led to catastrophe.
I'm going to pause on the catastrophe thing for a second.
Yeah.
You have, you've written a book here, and those of you that see this, she was kind enough to autograph and send me this, and this is just so freaking cool. And look at the cover of that. It's just beautiful. The Starfish Chronicles, rising from trauma through faith, friendship, and fly fishing. I'm not even sure where to start with this, Sue, other than I guess, when did you make the decision to write the book?
Well, I think in my heart, Adam, I made that decision probably 20 years ago.
Okay. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to write a book.
Okay.
And even the book is my 8-year healing journey. And it also amplifies the women who came alongside to light my path home. But throughout the healing journey, that desire to write a book intensified, but it just was never the right time. And I couldn't quite get past my own fear barriers
Okay.
to be able to write the book that I thought would be impactful and helpful. And so it just never came to fruition. I mean, I had many, many false starts, many, many rough drafts, and other things would take priority. Well, if I'm quite honest with you, there was a lot of negative self-talk, like I'm not, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think anyone's going to care. Why do people want to hear this story? And really, should I put this kind of like raw, honest storytelling out for other people to judge? So the decision came when I was least expecting it. I had gone through a post-traumatic growth program.
Okay.
And in that post-traumatic growth program, during one of the activities that they led us through, I had this aha moment. I call them glimmers.
Okay.
Intuition, gut feeling, however your worldview wants to think about that I needed to start a podcast. And Adam, my friend, I am not like a podcaster. I didn't even know how to do a podcast, but it was like, you need to do this podcast. And so I was coming up to my 50th birthday. I was about a year and some months away from my 50th. And I was like, okay, listen, telling myself, I'll do this podcast and I'll just make it a select group. So I'll do 50 stories, 50 women before I turn 50. So 50 before 50 became this purpose. And you know how it is. I went to all my friends and I was like, hey, gals, guess what you get to do? they reluctantly were like, okay, Sue, here we go. And many of them told me, Sue, listen, I don't have a story. No one's going to care. Kind of the same internal narrative that I had around the book for so many decades. And I said, no, you do. You do have a story. People will care. And so we went forward, and 50 women by the time I turned 50 on this podcast. And as I was concluding the podcast, I was standing in my kitchen. It was late in the evening, getting a glass of water. The refrigerator light is sort of illuminating the tiny space that I'm in. And I just had this powerful, powerful glimmer. It was, it was almost like a download. And it was like, Sue, now is the time. Now you're going to write the book. And it was this connection of bringing the women's stories and the women who had been on this podcast and supported me into written format. And so I took action and I just started, and it just came together.
So is the book about part of the podcast and the interviews that you did, or is the book about fill in the blank?
A little bit of both. Primarily, it is my healing journey, and it is just my walk through 8 years from the point where I knew that I had to get help and to start on the journey into this point where I am now. In the book, there are connections to some of the stories, but they're not full board stories of what was on the podcast. But there are connections to those women because they really did help light the way. And sometimes it wasn't lighting the way during the podcast. Sometimes they had lit the way before we had talked on the podcast, which is why they were on the podcast.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I know you talk a lot about the intersection of trauma and faith. When you were going through some of the darkest parts of your journey, how did your faith keep you anchored?
Well, if I'm quite honest, I'll say I was back and forth. I mean, sometimes I was very strong in my faith, very strong in asking for guidance, but then I got really angry and I got really frustrated, and I was very much feeling like, why am I still circling the drain? Why am I still in this space? Why can I not make any forward momentum? And it wasn't until I started not only getting these glimmers, and again, maybe that's the Holy Spirit, maybe it's intuition. I think it just depends on how you conceptualize things, but getting these feelings and then actioning them. So I started to take action on the things that felt very strong and very important, even when they didn't make sense. Even when I was like, are you sure I need to move to Montana? Are you sure I need to start fly fishing? Like these things that just didn't necessarily line up, but they were so strong and so powerful that I felt like I had to do something with them.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to see forward movement.
When you started seeing the forward movement, like how long was that? Like a time, if there was a timeline you had to put that on from when you started it and then actually seeing the forward movement. Did this take a couple of years that you experienced this, or was this happening throughout the entire process?
Well, I think that the glimmers, the forward movement, the action was happening throughout the entire 8 years. But my acknowledgement of, oh, this is God guiding me, this is what this is, didn't happen until much later. And I can tell you that when I actually put it all on paper, right, in the book format, it, even to me, it was astounding to look back and to see how the path had been created for me. But it was like breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
I could not see the whole thing. And it was just having this modicum of faith to do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and see what would happen.
You
and what would open up.
you kind of come to the realization that you don't have to do it all at once. It's just kind of like, at least for me, it was like bits and pieces, right? I'm not a writer. But the nice thing, we have technology and I have a microphone. So now it's like talk what I want to say, transcribe it, edit it later, kind of a thing. I'm really curious, Sue, like when you started going pen to paper, how long did it take you to actually physically write it out?
It took me over a year
Okay.
to actually
Yeah.
to do the whole thing, and it was a little messy because some authors outline the whole thing, and I had sort of a pretty rough outline that then got totally blown up. It was like a disaster. So I would just write what was on my heart and what felt like needed to come out, and then sometimes I would move things around, and sometimes I would completely like erase everything that I had written.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't necessary for the context of the book. But it was, I mean, it was more than a 12-month period, writing multiple times a week.
So if you're watching this or if you're listening to this, you're already online. I want you to check out Sue's website. It's Sue Kerver. Did I say that right?
Kerver.
Kerver, yeah. SueKerver.com. Kerver.com. Sue Kerver, all one word, .com. Open up another browser, go to her website. You can get the book there too, just FYI. The book is called The Starfish Chronicles. Let me put that up there again for y'all to see that, because that is just an awesome cover. One of the things in your book, like one of the pillars I saw was friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
As adults, especially like after the military, finding like a solid tribe or a group can sometimes be tough. What advice can you give someone who's feeling maybe isolated right now? What can they do?
Adam, thanks for asking this question,
Yeah.
because I felt so alone in my journey for a really long time. And one thing that I did, that I write about, is I had to start to trust people. And it was hard. It was really hard for me to let those barriers down and to start to let people in. So I met a few really wonderful women through my work situations. And I had one friendship with a gal that started just by walking our dogs and having conversations as we walked our dogs. And then that grew and grew and grew. I did things like meetups. I did some veteran programs like Project Healing Waters. Fly fishing
Yeah.
was a really important part of my journey. And as far as like meeting other people. But I would say the advice that I would give is figure out where your interests are, what you're good at or what you like to do, or the things that bring you joy or the things that light you up, and then find ways to get connected within those communities. What I found is the more that I diversified my communities and did not just stay with one thing, the greater my outlook and my life became. It just became richer, because all of a sudden I'm interacting with women who are entrepreneurs. I'm interacting with women who are athletes. I'm interacting with women who are veterans, or, whatever the case might be, because I diversified through different outlets.
Yeah.
And it was all in alignment with things that bring me joy, that I like to do.
That's such an important message. I want to kind of recap on something there, because like a lot of the times we have a lot of listeners that are veterans, people that are retiring out of the first responder community, and they don't know what to do. And they oftentimes they feel alone. And one of the things that, and I felt that way. Hell, there's days even now where some days it's like you could be a room full of people and you just feel lost. The thing is you have to get involved. Don't isolate yourself.
Mhm.
Sue just made a great example, and I'm so glad that she brought this up. Is find the things that you find joy in. You guys have heard me on this show say I'm an outdoorsman. I love to hunt, fish. I could be in the outdoors, walk the dogs, whatever. That heals me. I find the nature to be very healing for me personally. That works for me. It might not work for you. So find whatever it is that works for you and do that, as long as it's healthy. Let me be clear on that. As long as it's healthy, don't go to the bottle or do unhealthy things. Find something that's healthy, and then get involved. Get involved in like a community-based organization or whatnot. It doesn't have to be a veteran one or whatnot. Just as long as you're getting involved in getting out of the house, don't isolate yourself. So I wanted to highlight that again real quick.
So, Adam, if I could say something else on that.
Please.
Yeah. I think another thing, especially with veterans, but just people generally, we have so many different roles that we
Yeah.
play as human beings. Like you might have a woman who's a mom and a sister and an aunt and a veteran and an entrepreneur, all of these things. All of those roles are great places to look for like-minded people. The other thing that I realized is that we become post-traumatic growth. Let me just
Yep.
start again. Another thing that I realized during my post-traumatic growth experience is that we become the 3 to 5 people whom we spend the most time with. And so
Hmm.
I would say be selective
Yeah.
on those 3 to 5 whom you let into your inner circle, right? And some of the best women, my closest advocates, are the women whom I went through post-traumatic growth um, program with. And we are still just like very
Tight.
tight. So just think about that as you're building relationships and as you're seeking out relationships. I mean, elevate.
That's such great advice. I didn't even like I'm kicking myself right now. I didn't even think about that. Like look at the roles that you play in your life. You know, for me it was for so many years it was just father, you know. I was a dad. Well, I mean, I'm still a dad, but it's now I'm married, and so now it's a husband and a business owner. So find other business owners that you can get. Here's the thing, folks: you don't get anywhere in life doing everything on your own. If you show me somebody that got somewhere in life and they've never got any help from anybody, I'll show you a liar. And here's the other thing. So I think you and I are cut from the same cloth when it comes to like I have trust issues, and it's always like you get burned. So then all of a sudden you feel like your guard's got to be up, and you go into that defense mode. So now you don't want anybody in your circle, or you don't want to let anybody in your circle, and that's part of life, guys. You gotta get through it. You walk through it. I tell something recently happened to my son, similar situation. I said, it's all part of the experience. You gotta move on to the next one. We're here. We're lucky that we got to wake up today, right? So let's take full advantage of that, right?
Well, and one thing that I think helped with me is that with the trust issues, Adam, there was so much shame
Yeah,
and fear of being vulnerable surrounded
yeah,
within it.
yeah,
So once I started to let my guard down a little bit, I was able to do that through this sense of curiosity. Like, okay, what would happen if? What would happen if I told my friend as we're walking the dog about my anxiety? What would happen if we had this conversation about, whatever, PTSD or whatever the case might be?
yeah.
And it really wasn't, I was concerned that people wouldn't fully understand my experience, but what I found instead is that people, even non-military people, not like people who not veterans, had similar life experiences, right? Plenty of people have gone through divorce.
Yeah.
Plenty of people have moved. Plenty of people have lost jobs, changed jobs, lost purpose, found purpose. Like there's these universal truths which connect us, and just being able to have these conversations about that
Yeah.
that were not always couched in a veteran experience allowed me to expand my universe
I love that.
greatly.
I love that. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. I'm gonna put this up here so you guys can see. Those of you that are watching the video, you founded two gals and a boat. Oh, I love the name of that. Two gals in a boat to get more women out on the water. Why is it so critical to create that specific space for women in the outdoors?
Well, I think that there's a lot of barriers to entry.
Okay.
Um, and those barriers of entry can come from everything from, I don't know if I can be outdoors by myself. I don't know how to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm afraid of bears. What if somebody approaches me and that scares me? Like there's just like a lot of
What ifs?
what ifs.
Yeah.
And for a long time, and I'll say that this is getting better, but for a long time, the fly fishing community was also not really female centric.
Right.
Um,
I could see that. Yeah.
right. So what if I'm the only one? And that was my experience for a long time, is just being the only one. Um, so what I realized is that it wasn't really about fishing. It was about creating an experience where women could get together and find success in something that they weren't sure that they could do. And here's why that's important. Because when you when you create an environment where someone can succeed,
Yeah.
they can translate that to any other area of their life. So it becomes less about being outdoors on the river, although my friends, that's very important, at
Yeah.
least in my experience. But also, like being able to do the thing where fear has been a barrier to entry, whether that's starting a business, becoming a parent, becoming mayor of your community, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And I had gone through a female centered veteran leadership program, and there were all of these desired outcomes that women had talked about, but almost unequivocally, every single one had this fear based factor where it made me wonder, why is it so hard to move forward with that? And so I just wanted to create space where we could move forward, we could be successful together, and then that feeling of success could be translated
That's
to
so
other areas
cool.
of life.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. And I love that you paint that image of like doing something like fly fishing. Like I had learned how to do that just recently. And I say recently with like in the last 5 years. And I fell in love with it. And I can see why people do it. It's also very effing frustrating. A lot of different types, but because I got sausage fingers, so it's like trying to tie stuff, on there, it doesn't always work. Anyway, I think that's really great that you started doing that. I got to ask, what got you into fly fishing? Like, what was that? Like, oh, that seems I'm gonna do that, or I want to try that.
I'm telling you, it was a glimmer.
Really?
And it was. And so I started Googling, I was in Texas, and I started Googling like how do I do this? Women's, fly fishing in Texas or whatever. There wasn't a whole lot out there to teach me the skill sets.
Right.
So Adam, I'll be honest, I was a hot mess for a long time. I mean, I was the kid that had my stuff all up in the bushes. Every time I cast, I was like, oh my God, I got to tie on another fly. Done messed it up again. Like it was a mess. But I just kept at it. And then I found this nonprofit, Casting for Recovery,
Okay.
and they're a wonderful organization that that helps women who have breast cancer, right? And they take them for a weekend, and they do these weekend retreats. And fly fishing is a really big part of that journey. And I had a girlfriend who was like, Sue, will you come volunteer for us and be a river guide? And I was like, oh my God, yes, like I'd love to. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. So I'm with the person whom I'm supposed to be guiding, spending 30 minutes tying on a fly because I had no idea. But we had the best time. We laughed and we just had joy. And, we're standing in the river and trying to tie this fly on. And it was just fantastic. And I was like, whoa, there is more to this than just casting a line and hoping for a fish.
Yeah.
This is what it's about, this
Yeah.
connection and camaraderie and the feeling of the water over my boots. And I think that's really what started my connection with fly fishing.
I love that. That's such a great story. Folks, if you're listening or watching, open up another browser. I want you to go to Sue's website, Sue Kerver. It's KERVER.com. That's Sue, SUEKERVER.com. Sue, you also do some coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And you use something called wild writing. Did I say that right? Or is it wild writing? Is that what it is?
Wild writing.
Okay,
Yeah.
wild writing. To help people kind of process their transitions, thoughts, etc. So for those that are watching or listening that are might be intimidated by writing, yours truly, how does putting a pen to paper, how does that actually help with someone's trauma?
I think writing can be really powerful to processing the journey, but I think that that's another thing that really intimidates folks. I've seen it time and time again. I've even had girlfriends who've been like, "How do I even journal? Like, what do I do with it? What do I put on the paper?"
Yeah.
The thing that's beautiful about wild writing is it takes a lot of that away because it's less about writing. It's not performative. It's not about entertaining one another. It's just a gateway to drop into your creative. And oftentimes when we drop into our creative, whether it's through writing or pottery or, podcasting or whatever your thing is, that is when we can really start to connect with our deeper selves. And so it's beautiful. The process of wild writing is beautiful because I offer a poem, and in that poem, there's some jump off lines, which gives you a start. You already have your starting line, and you can use that jump off line and you can write about the sandwich that you made for lunch, if that's what's on your mind, or you can write about the garden that you planted or a vacation that you went on or whatever you want to write about. There's no right and there's no wrong. The key is just to keep that pen moving for the amount of time that you're given. And then the other part of the wild writing experience is once you have written, you share, and everybody shares, right? So you read what you've written, but again, not to entertain, not to be judged, because nobody gets to give commentary
Right.
on what you've written. They simply get to say thank you with gratitude, and you move on. And so I think doing that, writing it down, and then being able to be in that deep listening experience also for other people within a circle that's created with the same people over a period of time creates that psychological safety that's really, really important when we start to share our stories.
That's such a good example of like building trust too. You said that psychological side, creating that circle where you're reading out what you just wrote, and then you're just like, okay, well, these people, I'm not being judged because they're the same. They're going through the same thing I'm doing right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and another thing in that, Adam, is that you don't get to then sidebar a conversation with a person and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about what you wrote."
Yeah.
You have to ask permission. Can I ask to speak about what you wrote about today? And that person has full autonomy to be like, "Yeah, no, don't want to talk about it." And then you're done. End of conversation. So there are some rules around it, which just really helps create that safe landing spot so that you can, again, put whatever you want to on the page.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's so awesome. So we're coming up on time. I want to ask you, there's two things I want to ask you, but one is there anything else you want to cover or say to the viewers or the listeners today?
I would say probably the most important message that I have is that, as we've already talked about, you are not alone. Whatever space that you're in, whatever path you are walking, whatever journey that you are on, you don't have to do that by yourself. And then the other thing that I would say is that I think that it's much, much, much more courageous to ask for the help that you need instead of trying to strong arm and do it all yourself. Like, we are taught to shove things down. We're taught to bootstrap it. We are taught to just have to be the strong force and do everything on our own. And we actually don't have to, right? So whether you are a leader, a manager, top level, like, it doesn't matter where you are, what stage of life you are in. If you need help, ask for the help that you need.
Please. Please. That's solid advice. Sue's dropping bombs on you guys today, and I'm loving every minute of it. Sue, I got one last question for you. The show's called The Decision Hour. We have to make decisions every day. Name a time in your life where your feet are on the line and you have to make that decision. What is it, and what's the atmosphere like at that time?
Well, I think one of the most pivotal decisions that I ever made, Adam, was exactly what I just said. It was asking for help. And the atmosphere was that I was terrified and I was scared,
Yeah.
and I was sure that I could still do it all by myself. But I also had reached a point where I was broken. And it was this decision of, do I continue on this path, which is very likely going to lead to a very bad ending point,
Right.
or do I actually wave the white flag and seek out the help that I need? And I chose the latter. I sought out the help that I needed. And make no mistake, it was not easy, not only to make the decision, but then to follow through with all of the actions that decision created.
Yeah.
Right. So the results of it were not necessarily what I anticipated or what I wanted at that time in my life, but God knows they're exactly what I needed to lead me where I am today.
I'm certainly glad you are where you are today. And I appreciate you, Sue. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for this conversation.
I love it. I love it. Folks, again, go check out our website, Sue Kerver, SueKerver.com. Also, go check out our parent network, Heroes Media Group. Check out the new shows that are over there and some of the new articles that are up over there, heroesmediagroup.com. That's all the time that we got for today, folks. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.